Hello viewers, here in front of you H.M. Kalita, Senior Faculty Member of Ecolibor Residential IS Coaching Academy, Guwahati. Today we are going to discuss a topic from Assam history. The topic is beginning of a resistance movement by those nobles started in 1828 till the revolt of 1857. So our discussion will start from the beginning of resistance movement till the revolt of 1857, and our discussion will be limited to Assam's participation in those revolt of 1857 and those in the beginning of resistance movement. All discussion will be related to Assam only. As you know, the decay and fall of Ahom monarchy started after the challenges by Moamoryas. The decay started from the rebellion of Moamoryas that started during the reign of Lakshmi Hingho 1769 to 80 to Gorinath Hingho, that is 1780 to 1795. That means those Moamorya rebellion that started from 1769 till 1795 is a long period of rebellion that was started by the Moamoryas. And because of those Moamorya rebellion, the zenith, the supreme power achieved by those Ahom dynasty, Ahom monarchy became decay and fall. After the Ahom decay, after the Muammar rebellion, then brought those Burmese, those Manor Akraman. That means after the decay of and fall of Ahom dynasty, one after another Burmese invasion started on Assam. আমি জানো মানৰ আক্ৰমণ প্ৰথম মানৰ আক্ৰমণ started in 1817. The second Burmese invasion started in 1819, and the third Burmese invasion took place in 1821. And after those invasions, Burmese ruled Assam practically from close of year 1821 till their capitulation at Rangpur in March 1825. During those rule of Man, those rule of Burmese, those period was marked by bloodshed, rapine, plunder and devastation. The roads became red with blood, hundreds of wounded, half dead and dead were to be found anywhere, everywhere in the roads and in the jungle. It was in this worst hour of peril that the British appeared as the deliverer of the people of Assam. And that is why people of Assam hailed the advent of British with unbounded joy and offered them the most loyal cooperation. Then came the Yandabu Treaty, Yandabu Hondi, that took place, that signed in February 1826 between the General Campbell from the British side and the governor from the Burmese side. Once British put their footing in Assam. For the administrative convenience, British partitioned Assam into two divisions. Western division or the Lower Assam, Eastern division or the Upper Assam. The Upper Assam with Bishwanath as the boundary at North Bank. Each division, that is Western and Eastern division, were controlled by a commissioner. David Scott was placed in charge of Lower Assam headquarters at Guwahati, and he was made senior commissioner. Colonel Richards placed in charge of Upper Assam headquarters at Rangpur, and he was made junior commissioner. At that time, the population of Lower Assam was around approximately 350,000, and the population of Upper Assam was around 3 lakhs. That means the total population of plains of Assam was around 6,50,000, and those population of hills are not included here. And the tax collected by the British East India Company was around 3 lakh from the Lower Assam and 1,80,000 from Upper Assam. That means the tax collected by the British East India from together from Lower Assam and Upper Assam was 4,80,000. This revenue will definitely come while discussion in the later stages. So those tax imposed by the British East India Company in Upper Assam, British East India Company retained the khel system and imposed 3 rupees per head, and Lower Assam was divided into 24 paraganas and put in charge under Chaudhries, and the taxes were collected by Thakuriyas, and all those accounts were held by the Patwaris. The Lower Assam, a tax of 2 rupees known as Gadhon imposed on each pike. In return, that pike was entitled for 3 puras of arable land and is called the Gamati. So Gadhon was 2 rupees and Gamati, that means each pike was entitled for 3 puras of arable land, and that is your Gamati. From this attitude and actions of the British, it became evident that the East India Company was bound to strike roots in Assam. The nobles found that their states and pikes were being taken away in lieu of a petty pensions. The loss of power and privileges coupled with removal of their kith and kins, those logos and lixos, from their offices made it clear that the life of those nobles were definitely bleak. That is why those nobles organized themselves to restore the old Ahom monarchy and made repeated attempts to oust the British East India Company. The first of this attempt was made in 1828 under the leadership of Gomodhar Kuor and Dhanjoy Piolia Borgohain. Gomodhar, son of Phana Kuor, a prince of the Ahom blood, and Dhanjoy Piolia Borgohain was a noble. Gomodhar and Dhananjoy Piolia Borgohain, under their leadership, they marched along with their followers from Morioni towards Jorhat with their followers, but their movement was intercepted by the British and after feeble resistance of the Commodore and his followers, they surrendered, and Commodore was apprehended and put for capital punishment. Of course, Commodore was a minor, that is why his capital punishment was converted into imprisonment. While Ranjoy Piolia Borgohain was sentenced to death, but he escaped from the jail and penetrated into the Naga hills. At this time, the Khasi under Tirot Singh were maturing plans to expel the British from their hills. Of course, the British also have faced those movement of Singhphos, Khamtis from the southeast and created considerable trouble to the British in the company. Another Ahom, Prince Godadhar, relatives of Jogeshwar Sinha, also tried for a rebellion against British with the help of Burmese Khamti people, but his revolt also foiled by the British. Then in 1830, again Ranjoy Piolia Borgohain organized an attack in grand scale. This time, Ranjoy Piolia Borgohain, along with his two sons, Horokanto and Horonath, his son-in-law, Jeoram Dulia Borua, Pioli Borfukan, son of Bodon Borfukan. You must know Bodon Borfukan, who brought man to Assam. Rupsan Kaur, Deoram Dehiya Borua, and Boom Singh Pho. All together, they started rebellion against British East India Company, but their movement was betrayed by their own man Hodia Khwa Gohain. Dhananjay, along with son Horokanto, penetrated into the Naga hills. Pioli Borfukan, Jeoram Dulia Borua, Horonath, Rupsand, and Boom Singh Pho apprehended by the British. All are found guilty by the Panchayats at Jorat. As a result, on August 1830, Pioli Borfukan and Jeoram Dulia Borua hanged at Sipsagar near Sipsagar Tank. Some of the historians call those Pioli Borfukan and Jeoram Dulia Borua among the first martyrs of India against the British imperialism. Horonath, Rupchand, Boom Singh Pho were sentenced to life imprisonment, that is, they are sentenced to 14 years of jail. At this time, David Scott submitted a proposal for restoration of Ahom monarchy in Upper Assam. But his proposal was delayed because of the death of Governor General William Bentinck. And finally, his proposal was accepted and resolved, and Purandar Sinha was considered under certain terms and conditions to become head of the Upper Assam. On March 2, 1833, an agreement was made between Purandar Sinha by which he bound himself inter alia to pay an annual tribute of rupees 50,000 and to obey orders of the political agent and to administer justice on the principles of company territory. So, Purandara again became the vassal king, and he has to pay a tributary of 50,000 to the British East India Company annually, and he has to obey those orders of political agent of British. On April 24, 1833, Purandara was welcomed at Jurad by 19 gunshot and installed him on the throne according to your Ahom rights. Chandrakanta Hinga also attempted and gave a proposal to British that he would pay, instead of 50,000, he would pay 70,000 as a tributary and would obey all the terms and conditions as put by the British East India Company. But British kept him on confinement at Koliabar and pacified by offering a pension of rupees 500 per month. The status of Purandara was little different from a Jamindar and had to retaining his position by paying the tributaries and obeying the British. Purandara revived the institution of Patra Mantris and appointed Mohidar as Buragoy, Malbhog as Borgoy, and Dandeshwar as Borpatra Goy, and Rudranath as Borburwa. Purandara imposed capitation tax of 3 rupees on each spike for 2 pura of arable land. These settlements are made by the Khaldars appointed by Purandara. Meanwhile, 1823, tea plant was discovered by British in Upper Assam, and in 1837, Assam Tea Company was established. On the advice of the political agent of British, for the benefit of tea planters, particularly those European tea planters, Purandara granted those tea planters an extensive area near Gabaru Hills. That means Purandara gave at concessional rate the wasteland to those European planters only. Purandara had started trouble on the outbreak of cholera in 1835, followed by a famine in the next year. His financial difficulties became acute when the British government abolished those capitation house and heart taxes on central and lower Assam. Purandara made representation for remission of his tribute from 50,000 to lesser amount, and Mr. Captain White, appreciating the difficulties and reducing those tributaries from 50,000 to 36,000 annually. Looking at those, nobles also began to lodge complaints after complaint to Major Jenkins. As a result, British East India got opportunity to annex Upper Assam with vast potentials of tea, coal, petroleum to British India Empire. Accordingly, September 16, 1838, Upper Assam was permanently annexed under British territory. Of course, after that or during that period, British East India Company also faced some trouble from the North Kasar under Tularam, the British also got troubles from the Nagas, from the Lusai, so on. This all about the discussion of beginning of resistance movement in Assam, starting from 1828 till 1838. Now let us discuss the second part, that is Revolt of 1857 in Assam. As you know, British were always concerned only with the collection of taxes. The new government was totally indifferent for improving the economy of the measurable riots. While the condition of the riots aggravating year after year, but the extortion by the British government went on increasing. As I have already told, the revenue collected by the British at the beginning around 4,80,000, but in a few years later the revenue collected by the British was 7,43,700 annually. Looking at those figures, one can understand the purpose of British East India Company. Also, Controversial Hingho, grandson of Purandar Hingho, wrote to the commissioner in 1856 for reinstate of those nobles with their grievances and with their facilities, along with those Loguas, Lixos, Kitchen Kings, attendants, and other means of support. But British East India Company was least bothered about those representatives. Chandrakanto, the ex-Raja, after making several attempts to regain his position, died with heavy hearts in 1838. At the early age of 43, Chandrakanto Hingho died. Purandar Hingho, who was also removed from his position, made several representations urging upon his restoration till he breathed his last in 1846. It was at this critical point, moment, Moniram Datta Borbhandar Borua Diwan. Again I am repeating the word. At this critical moment, Moniram Datta Borbhandar Borua Diwan, one of the most loyal and trusted of the company, of the British East India Company, assumed a new role as the leader of the War of Liberation. So, Moniram Dewan evolved as a leader of the War of Liberation. Moniram Dewan then became a true representative of the rising middle class in Assam. Moniram Dewan remained loyal to the rulers as long as cooperation with them served his purposes, served his interests. Beginning his career as a loyal servant and friend, he held important offices of administration. As an administrative officer, Moniram gained knowledge of miserable conditions of those nobles and the people as Diwan. Throughout Moniram's career as a loyal friend of British, he had been showing great courage in occasional clashes with officers till he reached a stage when his defection became inevitable. It was at this stage that Moniram resolved to organize a struggle to free Assam from the foreign thraldom. At this moment, Moniram Dewan organized a struggle to free Assam from foreign thraldom. Now comes the participation of Moniram Dewan in 1857. So these are the background, and more about Moniram Dewan was that Moniram served the British first as a Tahsildar of Upper Assam. He was also indispensable to Purandar Singh when he was reinstated, and he was vested with the supervision of several new Mojas along with his normal duties as Sirastadar in Revenue Department. So Moniram, over and above Tahsildar, over and above Sirastadar, he was also allowed to supervise some of the Mojas. After that means Moniram's resignation, Moniram, after resigning his government official post, those as Sirastadar or those as the Tahsildar, he started his own 2 gardens. After resigning from those assignments, Moniram started 2 gardens, namely Senimara and Sanglung. That means Moniram Dewan started 2 tea gardens. One is Senimara, another is Sanglung, of his own at Jorat, and he was a very successful and remarkable success he achieved during those plantation of 2 gardens, that is Senimara and Sanglung. But all his hopes vie with British capitalism were shattered when he was deprived of the benefit of getting wasteland at concessional rate as he was getting by the European planters near the Gavaru Hills. So, as Moniram was a local tea planter, he was deprived of all those wasteland at concessional rate from the Purandar Singh under the supervision of British East India Company. The more trouble started when the remaining Mojas, because Moniram and his family were the Mojadars. His trouble started when in 1851 all the Mojas, those Mojas were there enjoying for several generations, were taken from him, and it was given to a person subordinate to him. That means those Mojas were taken from Moniram Dewan and his family and given to those subordinate working under him, and given to those Mojas to his subordinates. Disposed of everything, Moniram faced with financial hardship to run his family, which consists of 185 members. Moniram now realized that there was no future for him and his countrymen under the colonial rule. Moniram now became the Saring Raja's, that is Chandra, that is Kondrapesar Singha's grandson. Kondrapesar Singha is the grandson of Purandar. So Moniram now became the friend, philosopher and guide of Kondrapesar Singha, the Saring Raja, who is a grandson of Purandar Singha. And he inspired Saring Raja and inspired him to action. He inspired him to take action by rousing sanguinary hopes of getting back the country under his management. So now Moniram has become the friend, philosopher, and guide of Kondrapeswar Hingo, the Saring Raja, and he inspired him to rise against the British. Meanwhile, the Lieutenant Governor of Bengal, John Campbell, desiring to pay a visit to Assam, and he asked Mr. A.J. Mills, the judge of the Sodor Diwani Adalat, to Assam for closer and more detailed inquiry of Assam. So, the Lieutenant Governor wants to visit Assam, and to get the existing position about the inquiry, he wants to inquire about the prevailing condition of Assam. So he sent Mr. A.J. Mills, the judge of the Sadar at Bengal, to get the on-the-spot study of the Assam. When Mills arrived at Sibsagar in June 1853, Kondrapeswar Hingo submitted at the instance of Moniram Dewan a representation claiming his right to hold Upper Assam on tributary basis under company. So Kondrapeswar Hingo put an representation at the advice of Moniram Dewan to get back his kingdom of Upper Assam, to get the right over the Upper Assam on tributary basis from the company. Mills had received a large memorandum of petition from hard-pressed nobility of Upper Assam, all representing their long-standing grievances. Moniram also took the opportunity and submitted 2 memorandum and prayed for some favors in recognition of his past good services, and he pleaded for restoration of Ahom monarchy. Moniram's second representation was for the grievances of the people of higher class, mainly those nobility. Moniram also complained Mills against the neglect of the study of Hotros, discontinuance of the worship at Temple of Kamakhya, and against appointment of men of Marwar and Bengalis of Sylhet as Mojadars when several respectable families were out of employ. In his report, Mills made adverse comment on Moniram as an untrustworthy and intriguing person. All his efforts of Moniram were not accepted by Mills, and Mills gave some adverse comment on Moniram Dewan as untrustworthy and intriguing person. Moniram's disaffection being thus complete, he was compelled to have last ditch in Calcutta, where he arrived in April 1856 to represent his cases before the Lieutenant Governor of Bengal, John Campbell. And he arrived in Bengal, in Calcutta, and during his stay at Calcutta, Moniram used to stay in the houses of 2 famous Bengali merchants. Those 2 Bengali merchants were Asutosh Dev and Pramod Nath Dev. During the period of his stay there at Bengal, Moniram came into contact with some of the notable personalities and merchants like Raja Gurudas, son of Maharaja Nanda Kumar, Nilomani Mishra, Kunjo Bihari Mallik, Rajendra Datta. He had discussions with those intellectuals about the contemporary and social and political problems of the country. Although the Zamindars in Bengal were loyal to the British, and the leading intelligentsia there were opposed to the revolt of 1857, though some of them lent their moral support to the revolt. Thus, in Calcutta, Moniram received an intellectual backing which he needed most before plunging into a new course of action. About this time, there occurred the revolt, the insurrection of the Sipahis of Meerut, Delhi, Lucknow, Kanpur, and news reached to Moniram that Bahadur Shah had been proclaimed emperor of Hindustan at Delhi by the rebels, and many princes were regaining their lost possession. These are the news received by Moniram Dewan. Moniram Dewan calculated the possibility of organizing a similar insurrection, similar revolt in Assam for overthrowing the British Raj, and considered the situation there very favorable. Most of the Sipahis of 1st Assam Light Infantry stationed at Dibrugarh were from western Bihar, the hotbed of rebellion of 1857. These Sipahis sure to come forward to drive away the foreigners. It was an expectation of Moniram Dewan to get support of those Sipahis from the 1st Assam Light Infantry, because maximum of the Sipahis are from the western Bihar, the hotbed of mutiny rebellion of 1857. Of course, there are 500 Assamese soldiers belonging to the army of erstwhile Purandar Singha, which were disbanded by the police after his deposition in 1838. So Moniram was sure to get support from those 500 soldiers of disbanded soldiers of Purandar Singha. Further, the strength of European army in Bengal was only 2,400. There was also a acute transportation problem in case of a revolt in Assam. The government was not in a position to dispatch an army from Bengal to Assam. To add to their utter dismay, there was not a single European soldier at Assam. The number of British officers also was very small in number, and the European planters were scattered in different parts of the valley, that a safe escape was not easy for them either. The old aristocracy was sure to join Moniram. Moniram was expecting the help of those old aristocracy, and he was sure to get help from those hill people. He was expected to get the support of those rebels of the hill people. The Khasis, the Singhos, the Khamtis, the Aukas already stirred up commotions against the imposition of British rule, and the Nagas who revolted in 1849. So Moniram was sure to get support of those old aristocracy of Assam and those from the hill people. Moniram wanted to take full advantage of the situation and goaded the young Prince Kondrapeshwar Singha along with the nobility, the gentry, including certain Hottradikar like Kamalabari, to take up arms against the British. Moniram communicated all the development in other parts of the country to his friends and associates in Assam through the messengers in the guise of fakirs called the Bhats. Those Bhats are visiting Assam regularly with the message of Moniram to his friends and associates in Assam about the happenings of development in other parts of the country. Normally, those at that time, the Saring Raja was supported by his chief advisor by Pioli Burua, because at the time Moniram was in Calcutta, so chief advisor of Saring Raja was Pioli Burua, and those letters by the Bhatt normally gave to Pioli, that is to Kondorpesar Hingo. Moniram, who get greatly helped by Madhu Malik, a Bengali Muktiar. Among those friends, associates who helped Moniram Dewan in this struggle, in this revolt, were mainly, I am telling, name of those associates or friend of Moniram Dewan. The names are Urbidhar Burwa, Mayaram Borbora, Sitra Sen Borbora, Komala Saringia Burwa, Muhidar Sharma Muktiar, Luki Hensua Burwa, Ugra Sen Morongi Khwa Gohai, Deoram Dihingia Burwa, Dutiram Burwa, Bahadur Gaubura, Sheikh Formudali, Modhuram Kos, Rupohi Aidev, Lumboy Aidev, Trinoy Nazir, Mairam Nazir. Those are the friend associates who gave their helping hand in the struggle, in the leadership to Moniram Dewan along with his friend and associate Pioli Burwa. So there are a lot of, friend associates in Assam who are giving helping hand to Moniram Dewan. During this period, the maneuver in Assam closely followed the rising in western Bihar under Kanwar Singh, the Rajput of landlord Jagdishpur. It was assumed that Moniram has a close contact with those Kanwar Singh's associates. Kanwar Singh, like Moniram Dewan, was a close friend of British till 1853, but subsequently he defected from British camp. Nana Sahib also communicated the preparation of the revolt to Assam. Further, Moniram had established relationship with Khan Bahadur Khan of Nawab of Bareilly. The news of development reached the Sipahis of Assam. Those developments that took place in other parts of the country, those news reached the Sipahis of Assam. The infantry in Assam consists of heterogeneous elements like Gurkhas, Rajputs, Manipuris, Ravas, Garos, Dwanis, and few Muslims. There are two regiments in Assam. The first Assam Light Infantry station at Dibrugarh and the second Light Infantry station at Guwahati. Till August 1857, the Sipahis of Assam remained passive but restless. At that time, Nirmal Hazari and Pioli Burwa, carrying a confidential message from Saring Raja, arrived at the military lines of the detachment camp at Gulaghat and came with tempting baits, tempting offer. The Raja would double the pay of the all Sipahis if they join the rebels and give native officers pay like Jangi Paltan. Sheikh Bhaikun, the Subedar of the detachment, readily agreed to join the rebels. Negotiations were also carried on other similar terms with the Sipahis of Sibsagar, Dibrugarh and Soikwa. So same tempting baits, same offer were given also to the other Sipahis at Sibsagar, Dibrugarh and Soikwa. Those are carried by Pioli Bulwa and Nirmal Hazari on the advice of Saring Raja. Sipais were more active at Jorat, where Saring Raja was maturing his plans. Moniram, staying at Calcutta, has been mobilizing the strength for the rebellion in Assam. In the month of Haun, that is July-August, Rustom Singh, Jamadar and two Sipais went to Jorat, where they visited Saring Raja and intimated to him all about the arrangement at Guwahati. So all those Sipais also, all those higher officers of Sipai also visited Saring Raja and gave the latest impetus, latest information to the Saring Raja. Meanwhile, the priest of the temple at Dergaon received gold from the Saring Raja for performing a puja. Normally, those customary pujas normally held before any expedition. Meetings after meetings were held at residence of Saring Raja at Jorat. The preparation made by the rebels and the alarms therefore spread far and wide. Most of the European planters left their gardens and arrived at Guwahati. The missionaries abandoned their churches. Some of them made a preparation to leave the India. And those at Guwahati, they said like that, we are at Guwahati still alive. But they said, though we are alive, but we cannot say we are safe. It was in the middle of the August that the Commissioner of Assam, Major Jenkins, got the scent of the revolt from the Holroyd, who reported him of the interview of some native military officers with the controversial Hinga. All this development, about what development were preparing by the rebels, everything got sent by the Commissioner of Assam, Major Jenkins, through Holroyd, who got those information from the interview of the military officers with the controversial Hingo, that is Saring Raja. And their preparation to place services of both regiments to reinstate the Raja on the throne and maintain the country for him. What are the plans going on the rebels about the reinstate of the Saring Raja and about the preparation, the services that will be received from both the regiments of the British, everything, those information received by the Commissioner, Mr. Major Jenkins from Holroyd. The Commissioner was at his wit's end. He undertook all possible measures to meet an emergency by mixing Gurkha in the military lines who were always loyal to the British. So, Mr. Jenkins prepared himself for any unforeseen emergency by mixing those infantry with the Gurkhas, because Gurkhas are always loyal to the British. The situation at Dibrugarh was most disquieting. Major Hani, the commander of the regiment there, called on Captain Lothar from Sadia and fortified the headquarters. So all preparation now made by the British. At Nagaon, the principal assistant destroyed the bridge over river Misa and Diju, so that the rebel cannot proceed to Jorat. At Guwahati, the European magistrate, clerks and missionaries numbering around 25 shouldered muskets, those long guns, and drilled themselves regularly. Major Jenkins asked the government at Bengal to send a European force immediately. In spite of the simultaneous outbreak of revolt in different parts of the India, the government at Bengal did its best by sending a contingent of 104 British men to attack them before they escape. The rebels fixed target in early October. The rebels also, they have fixed their target as the early October, when Moniram Dewan will be expecting from Bengal with arms and ammunition. Those rebels, they want to simultaneous attack at several headquarters, seize the magazines and treasuries, kill the Europeans and burn their houses, and would march to Jorhat and reinstate Kondrapur Hingho as the Raja, the king of Assam. It was also planned that Moniram Dewan was to be the prime minister, and next to him will be the Madhu Malik under his following rank. Subordinate to Moniram will be the Madhu Malik. Pioli Borua was to be the Borbhandar Borua. Lokinath Hensua Borua was to be the Nauboisa Fukon, and Kamala Saringya Borua to be made Subedar or Daruga of Jorhat. The rebel, the Saring Raja, also gave those bait that there will not be any khazana, but only 1 rupee per pura of rupeed land will be the tax, and there will not be any revenue on bari land. That means there will not be khazana, but 1 rupee per pura on rupeed land, and there will not be any revenue from the bari lands. And those liksos for those nobles will be again reinstated. On August 29, 1857, a meeting was held on the very night at the residence of Subedar Sheikh Bhaikun, who was about to join the rebel, and the proceedings of the meeting, as narrated by one local doctor named Keramat Ali. According to his eyewitness of the event, revealed that the rebels, both Hindus and Muslims, swearing in their respective religious taboos, were organized to kill all Europeans in Assam, to take possession of the magazines and the treasuries, and burn all those houses of the Europeans. Before Moniram could come to Assam to take the lead of a few of his letters, Moniram was about to come to Assam from Bengal. But unfortunately, a few of his letters intercepted by the principal assistant of Shivsagar through the instrumentality of Haranath Parvatia Borua, the police daruga of Shivsagar, most trustworthy person of British. So Moniram was about to come Assam, but some of his letters brought by those Bhatts were intercepted by the principal assistant of Shivsagar with the help of your Haranath Parvatia Borua, which is the daruga at Shivsagar. He was one of the most trustworthy police officers of British. The problem started when the Bhatt, who was carrying those letters, mistook Haranath Parvatia Borua as the Saring Raja. Again I am telling, the Bhatt, the messenger sent by Moniram Dewan, mistook Haranath Parvatia Borua as the king of Saring and delivered those letters to him concealed in a stick. The sticks were broken and the letter came out with the contents. That means those letters sent by Moniram through Bhatts, those letters were intercepted by the principal assistant with the instrumentality of Haranath Parvatia Borua, the daruga of Shivsagar. The letters were intercepted and the content came in front of your Major Jenkins. On September 7th, Holroyd, with detachment under Captain Lothar, made a night raid into the palace of Professor Hingo and arrested him. He was immediately sent to Alipur jail for detention. By the time Moniram Dewan, also arrested at Calcutta, detained for few weeks in Alipur jail and then brought to Assam for trial. So, Moniram Dr. Borbhandar Burua was arrested at Calcutta, detained for few weeks at Alipur jail, then brought to Assam for trial. Others implicated in the plot were also apprehended. When the news of the arrest of the Raja reached the Sipais, the Sipais believed that the Raja would be kept under the surveillance of those Sipais, whether at Dibrugarh or Tezpur or Guwahati or Sibsagar. Wherever they took the Raja, still he would be under the hands of those Sipais. And those Sipais vainly hoped that Raja Jung Bahadur of Nepal would be coming soon to their succor with his 10,000 soldiers. But meanwhile, a naval brigade disembarked at Dibrugarh, and on 2nd October 1857, the advance of a rebel army from Chittagong in Tripura was also checked by the Lieutenant Rose in Sylhet. Those who were coming all were checked by the British officers. At Dibrugarh, the mutinous Sipais were put before a court-martial, and most of them were transported for life, while others had to suffer long-term imprisonment. The Sipais of the detachment at Golaghat were discharged from duty. Captain Holroyd appointed Special Commissioner. Holroyd was appointed as a Special Commissioner under Act 14 of 1857, that is Defence India Act, and try the cases of the rebels. Moniram Dewan, Pioli Barua, both of them being convicted of betrayal, convicted of treason, convicted of revolt, were publicly hanged at Jorhat on February 26, 1858. Madhu Malik, Kamala Barua, Dutiram Barua, Morangi Khwa Gohai, Trinoyan and Mayaram Nazir received transportation for life. Bahadur Gaunpura and Sheikh Farmud Ali were deported to Andaman with the confiscation of property. Madhuram Kos was sentenced to 7 years imprisonment and many others to 3 years imprisonment. Rupohi Aido and Lumboy Aido, the first two Assamese ladies implicated in the plot, suffered loss of their property and their moja. Those Rupohi Aido and Lumboy Aido were considered as the first Assamese women that took part in the revolt of 1857. Captain Holroyd and Holonath Parvati Barua went to extremes in their vendetta against the probable sympathizer of the plot. None of the convicts was given any scope to plead their cases in self-defense. Professor Hingo was not brought for trial. He was detained at Burdwan till 1860, after which he was allowed to settle in Guwahati as a pensioner. He died in 1880s. Then came your Government of India Act and transfer of power from East India Company to Crown in November 1858 through the Government of India Act. Governor General received the title of Viceroy. After the Queen's Proclamation of 1858, Dutiram Barua, Sheikh Farmud Ali, Bahadur Gaunpura were allowed to come back Assam from the Andaman. So, This is all about our discussion related to your beginning of resistance movement till your what I call as the revolt of 1857. So the most notable points you have to keep in your mind. First, the August 1830, when Pioli Borphukon and Jeoram Dulia Borua were hanged at Sipsagar near Sipsagar Tank. So, Pioli Borphukon and Jeoram Dulia Borua were the first martyr of Assam who were hanged in August 1830. Then came Moniram Dewan and Pioli Borua. Both of them held convicted and publicly hanged at Jorat on 26th February 1858. Two things you must keep in your mind. That is Moniram Dewan and Pioli Borua. They were hanged publicly at Jorat because of their involvement in the revolt of 1857, and they are hanged at Jorat on 26 February 1858. And Pioli Borphukon and Jeoram Dulia Borua hanged at Sipsagar near Sipsagar Tank on August 1830. So main points, these things from prelims point of view, you can keep those leaders who took part in the resistance movement, and you are to keep in your mind names of those leaders who took part in the revolt of 1857. You must keep those two ladies also, Rupohi Aideo and Lumboi Aideo. Those are the two Assamese ladies who implicated in the plant suffered loss of their property and their moja. Those Rupohi Aideo and Lumboi Aideo are the first Assamese ladies who took part in the revolt of 1857. Hope you took whole discussion as a storyteller, because it's a lengthy 1 hour discussion. And with this, thank you everybody, and I completed my discussion. Thank you.